This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's tri-nation tour to Germany, Denmark and France. The participants are Anil Wadhwa, former ambassador, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today we are discussing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's three-nation, three-day visit as the PM visits Germany, Denmark and France in the coming next few days. We also see that this very important visit comes in the backdrop of the Ukraine war, which is going on. Ambassador Wadhwa, how do you see this trip and the Prime Minister and India's outreach to Europe, especially when we have the Ukraine crisis still going on and we have the world attention focused on that particular thing?
Principal purpose of the Prime Minister's visit to these three countries is for India to continue to strengthen its multifaceted relationship with these three countries. Of course, the most important engagement here would be the first stop at Berlin because that's an invitation from German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This is their first face-to-face meeting. The next city where the Prime Minister will have a series of engagements will be Copenhagen from May 3 to 4, but this is at the invitation of the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. And on the way back, he will make a brief stopover in Paris for a meeting with President Macron. And now, of course, the Prime Minister himself has said on the eve of his visit to Europe that this visit comes at a time when the region faces many challenges and choices. Uppermost in his mind and also of the European leaders would be the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. And for India, what Prime Minister Modi intends to do is to strengthen the spirit of cooperation with our European partners who are very important companions in India's quest for peace and prosperity.
Ambassador Wadhwa, we see that Prime Minister Modi has today also issued a departure statement as he leaves for Germany. In his first trip to Europe this year, the PM said that my visit to Europe comes at a time when the region faces many challenges and choices. Through my engagements, I intend to strengthen the spirit of cooperation with our European partners who are important companions in India's quest for peace and prosperity. And as you mentioned, in Germany, he will be meeting the German Chancellor Scholz, and he will also on his way back stop and meet the newly re-elected French leader Emmanuel Macron. Ambassador Wadhwa, when we see India's ties with the EU and especially if we look at India's relationship with Europe minus UK, how do you relate the progress in the last few years? We have seen a very steady improvement of ties with the US. We have seen that India and UK have this historical relationship. How do you look at this EU relationship and particularly these three countries?
So over the past 5 years or so, India's European policy has sought a multipolar world. And India's European engagement is institutionally with the European Union and also with bilateral and plurilateral partners. If you recall, India had a successful virtual India-EU summit, and that happened in July of 2020. And then in 2021 May, Prime Minister Modi had the first ever India-EU leaders meeting with all the 27 EU countries. Subsequently, there have been virtual summits in the UK, which happened in May 2021. And then meetings at the COP26 and G7 and G20 in 2021. All this added to the India-Europe Connect. We have some very important agreements which have been reached during this period. The first is the India-EU Strategic Partnership, a roadmap to 2025 that guides action for the India-EU Strategic Partnership. And despite the EU having an Indo-Pacific policy which came out in April 2021, there are still gaps which remain in its outreach to India. And it would be India's endeavor to bridge these gaps because EU, if you recall, has been subdued in its criticism of China and its only major Indo-Pacific policy which did not target China for its debasement of international rules and regulations. Now with UK, we have a 2030 roadmap for India-UK future relations heading into the Vision 2047 with shared security and prosperity as a guiding force. Of course, UK is no longer a part of the EU, but India wants both the UK and the EU to deviate from their traditional ambivalence towards an aggressive China and also take a more favorable stance as far as India's policies towards both China and Pakistan are concerned. So in recent weeks, of course, EU has been adjusting its policy. And the visit of Ursula von der Leyen very clearly demonstrated this when she was here for the Raisina dialogue. And I think the EU is now coming around also to completing an FTA with India because now there is a political inclination to do so. And this is not the case as it was in 2013, etc., when there were many other impediments.
Mr. Vadva, this visit is also happening in the backdrop of the Ukraine crisis. And we've also seen that India has taken its own position when it comes to the Ukraine crisis, when it comes to Russia. And India's position has not been exactly parallel to the position taken by the Western world, whether it is the US or the EU. How do you see this playing out? And do you feel that this visit also offers India and the Prime Minister an opportunity where he interacts with the leaders and is also able to put across India's position on especially the Russia-Ukraine crisis?
So as far as the Indian position on Ukraine is concerned, that has been amplified already at various fora. And, it has also been conveyed quite clearly at the United Nations in our explanation of votes and in our voting pattern. Also, recently, we've had a spate of visitors from the European Union, and India has taken this opportunity to also articulate its viewpoint on Ukraine to them, because we had the foreign ministers of Austria, Greece, and UK. We had the Indian president visiting the Netherlands recently, and now we are going to have these summits with Germany and the Nordic nations. So we've had plenty of opportunities, including the Dutch visit and Ursula von der Leyen's visit, where we clearly stated that India's policy towards Ukraine is based on cessation of hostilities and that the path to resolution of the conflict is through diplomacy and dialogue. And I think this will also be the line that Prime Minister Modi will push once again during his interactions in Germany and in Denmark and also in France. So I think there is no ambiguity in that stand. What will happen is that there would be an attempt, of course, from the side of the European Union countries to try and get India to change its stance on Russia. But that is unlikely, in my view, given the fact that our stand has been clearly spelled out and the Prime Minister is expected to stick to the stand which has already been explained.
Mr. Vadva, we also see that India and Germany in 2021 commemorated 70 years of the establishment of diplomatic relations and have been strategic partners since 2000. This visit will also be an opportunity for both the countries to enhance and intensify cooperation in a broad range of areas and for the two governments to exchange views on regional, global matters of mutual interest. And we also see that we have seen a change of guard in Germany. We have seen Merkel retiring from public life and we have a new chancellor. Do you feel that this relationship will go ahead as smoothly as it has gone past so far? And also, in particularly when we look at the India-German relationship, where do you think our focus should be in further strengthening this particular bilateral relationship?
So I think as far as Germany is concerned, we have a very important meeting this time. Both the leaders are going to co-chair the biennial India-Germany intergovernmental consultations, and several Indian ministers, including Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, and the Minister of State for Science and Environment, Dr. Jitendra Singh, will also be accompanying the Prime Minister and holding consultations with their German counterparts. Also, this time around in Berlin, the Prime Minister is jointly addressing a business roundtable along with Chancellor Scholz in an attempt to energize industry-to-industry cooperation to facilitate post-COVID economic recovery in both countries. And then, of course, he's meeting the Indian diaspora, which is now the norm during these visits. Germany has a significant proportion of Indian diaspora, and they can be a very ideal vehicle for these links. But I think as far as Germany is concerned, an important area of concentration would be foreign direct investment. This is linked to greater business-to-business cooperation between India and the German companies. If the Indian market is ready to accept an expanded foreign direct investments because it requires capital and technology to marry India's inherent strengths now, and the Atmanirbhar Bharat approach will therefore need to be put forward, consolidated, and new investments will be required in digital areas, but also in manufacturing. So on connectivity in particular, I think Germany must commit a project lending to generate business production in India. For instance, several metro projects have been funded by the European Investment Bank and the German government. And the German government is also participating in these projects, but it needs to transfer technology and build more metro-related equipment, including locomotives, rolling stock, rails, etc. in India. I think there would be also some very important discussion on energy security. And here Germany can be a very important partner of India, especially in the hydrogen space. Hydrogen and energy partnership would be extremely important for the two countries. There's also going to be focus on joint production of technologies and systems, and that includes things like in maritime electric propulsion systems, which are so needed in India today. We also have ongoing collaboration in artificial intelligence and cyber security, but these need to be stepped up in the future. This partnership is going to be truly strategic.
Mr. Vadva, we see that after Germany, the Prime Minister will travel to Copenhagen, and this is an official visit at the invitation of the Prime Minister of Denmark. He will participate in the second India-Nordic Summit, which is being hosted by Denmark, and the PM will also interact with other Nordic leaders of Iceland, Norway, and Sweden and Finland. How do you think this is also an opportunity for India as it reaches out to the Nordic nations? Because we have seen often in our discussions at home, sometimes the Nordic nations do not get as much attention perhaps as they should.
Yeah, so in Copenhagen, the Prime Minister will have a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister Frederiksen. Amongst the aspects that he will discuss will be a review of the progress made in the Green Strategic Partnership, which is extremely important between India and the Nordic countries. Now, there are 4 particular areas in which the Nordic countries are very important partners for India, and that is in digitization, in sustainability, renewable energy and innovation. And I think this visit is going to expand India's cooperation with the Nordic region in particular in these areas. Also, the second India-Nordic Summit, along with the Prime Ministers of Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Sweden and Norway, will help India to take stock of our cooperation since the first India-Nordic Summit, which happened in 2018. But unfortunately, there could be no quick follow-up because of the COVID situation. Now, of course, in these kind of summits, you also have normally discussions on the global security scenario, and therefore issues like the post-pandemic recovery, climate change, renewable energy, and India-Nordic cooperation in the Arctic region, which has emerged as a very important subject of discussion, will also come up. There is also an important India-Denmark business roundtable, which is on the agenda.
Mr. Vadva, we see on his return journey on May 4th, the Prime Minister will briefly stop over in Paris and he will meet Emmanuel Macron, the President of France. We've also seen that France has this important position within the European Union, and we have seen the articulations coming out of France. How important do you think it is for the India-France relationship, and Macron has been re-elected, and how does this take the India-French relationship particularly forward?
So as you said, on his way back home, the Prime Minister will stop over in Paris for a meeting with the President Macron, who has recently been re-elected to his post. But the friendship between Prime Minister Modi and Macron is well known. This will be a chance for him to convey his personal congratulations to him on his re-election, and also to reaffirm the close partnership and friendship between the two countries. Because India and France share a strategic partnership, French presence in the Indo-Pacific is growing. There is growing cooperation in the naval sphere and in terms of agreements for logistics, for example, between India and France. There is a growing convergence on how India and France look at what the aggression of China in the Indo-Pacific in particular. And also there is a very strong defense cooperation between India and France, especially in the aviation sector. So the regional and global issues will definitely come up for discussion, and the ongoing bilateral cooperation, which is quite multifaceted, will be renewed, giving a chance for India and France to work together in many new areas in this regard. France is also expected to play a very important role in strengthening the Indian and EU cooperation overall, in particular as far as the connectivity partnership is concerned, and also as far as the relationship between India and EU in trade and investment is concerned, because France would definitely be interested in taking that forward going in the future.
And in the coming next 3 days, we will continue our discussions and we will follow Prime Minister's visit to Germany, Denmark and France. With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's Tri-Nation Tour to Germany, Denmark and France. The participants were Anil Vadva, former ambassador, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airinsttalks@gmail.com.